What's up, boys and girls? This is Black and Yellow Movies, and we saw Annihilation, starring Natalie Portman.
And directed by Alex Garland.
Now, Annihilation is advertised kind of like a Ridley Scott's Aliens movie, where it's a thriller. You have this band of people going into an unknown land and getting picked off one by these aliens.
Yeah. But what we got instead was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
This movie definitely had a more cerebral feel to it. It's a mood piece, very atmospheric.
This is a science fiction movie based on a novel by the same name, Annihilation. It also introduces some ideas that are very satisfying to the casual moviegoers and casual science fiction fans. In the end, we give this movie an 8.5 out of 10.
8.5 is a pretty damn good movie. Annihilation stars Natalie Portman as a biologist who's grieving after the disappearance of her husband 12 months earlier, played by Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac is an American soldier who went missing to her knowledge, but he turns up 12 months later in a condition that she's not really used to.
Shortly after his return home, Oscar Isaac begins convulsing and showing signs of near death. Now, on their way to the hospital, they are ambushed by government officials, and that's really where this film kicks off.
Now, the director is the director of the movie Ex Machina, which we both love a lot.
Great movie.
Alicia Vikander, and guess who else?
Oscar Isaac!
Both great in it. Talks about AI. But the thing about that movie and this movie that they both share is the pacing. The pacing is very deliberate. Now, the way the movie is constructed in this way, it makes the scenes where the eventual monsters that come out much more tense.
Yeah, it's much more effective because one of the things we feel with movies that constantly have jump scares and monsters coming at you, this and that, you become desensitized to it. So whenever a scare does happen, it's not as effective. There's always something happening on screen. It's just not what you would expect from the previews. There's not always a monster jumping out at you. There's not always, music, playing loudly to get you to hold your armrest. These things are quieter throughout most of the film. But then when it actually happens, when the gears start pumping,
it's very effective.
Woo! Like, I remember there was one point where my wife starts, I can feel her starting to tighten her grip around my hand, and I'm just like, okay, this movie's doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to tighten that tension around, every moment that these alien monsters, I guess they are, appear, and it does it beautifully. And along with the pacing, it really helped how the story was progressed and told. You get a lot of Natalie Portman, flashbacking to other times within her marriage with Oscar Isaac, within her colleagues and her co-workers. You get her talking to Benedict Wong about her time in the Shimmer, where they eventually end up. And then you also have certain video footage that her and the other scientists discover while they're in the Shimmer. And all of these little different ways of telling the story ultimately make up the larger thread of the story. And in those slower moments that you might feel, throughout the movie, it really helps piece it all together. And it kept it really interesting the whole time. So even with that, quote unquote, slower pacing from maybe, more of a commercial moviegoer, the way the movie exposes itself through all these different things really keeps you on the tip of your toes.
As you're watching this movie, you're getting little bits and pieces of background, like Jamil said, of backstory, and it keeps you just, thirsty enough, hungry enough every single time to give you a little bit of information to want to know more. They give you enough so that you're kept wondering through the entire movie. You're never able to really figure out the movie just by a clue. Not only that, there's a lot of twists to the movie, and it makes you wonder, what's real and what's not. I got into a really good conversation with Jamil right after the movie, a long discussion of how people were affected through the Shimmer and how they weren't affected. Were they really affected? And just the different twists that come along. At the end of the movie, you're still thinking about it.
You're still thinking about it.
And I think that's a great testament to a great movie.
Another shining moment for this movie is the characters. You get these backstories and you realize each of these characters are not necessarily flawed, but they have their kind of own battle, their own thing that they're going through at the time. And you wonder how these backstories come into play with the Shimmer, where they're headed to. And then you get into the larger theme of this kind of self-destruction and what it means to these 5 different women. And I think that's a beautiful allegory that this movie holds throughout the film, and you don't realize it until, you get these backstories, and then you start to see them, in this new environment, one by one. You start to see how they are self-destructive, but also how they want to be sometimes reborn, maybe how they're battling with this thing, and what they're dealing with internally, mentally. And I think it's just a great spot to show like strong women in all their flaws, but trying to compensate for that.
this is a very smart, poetic movie. And like we said before, it's about the self-destructive nature of humans, but it's also about survival, and it's also about Darwinism. And to see how humans react in the Shimmer is very interesting. And I think it's very cool to see how 5 different people, like we said, with 5 different backgrounds, are affected by this Shimmer. And I think that's a very big pull to this movie. You are always surprised, and you're always, because the Shimmer is not like anything that we're used to.
Right.
We're continually being fed more and more little clues, and we start to discover more and more about what the Shimmer is as we watch the movie. And I think that's probably the best thing about the movie.
Right. It's not like many other sci-fi films where they pose a certain question with only a certain amount of outcomes that can happen. This one, I mean, it's almost like Under the Dome by Stephen King. Like, anything in the world, we don't know how this dome came down, but you're like, okay, it might be aliens. It might be something. But the way the Shimmer is set up, it could be a government experiment. It could be an alien.
It could be evolution.
It could be evolution. It could be a multitude of things. And that's what drew us to the film for the entire 2 hours. The fact that you have absolutely no idea why this thing is here, how people are going to react to it, how it's going to react to people. I think that's why it stands apart from a lot of other sci-fi films. Like I said, it gives you something more to grasp on than just a scenario that can have 2 to 3 different outcomes. This one can have almost any different
world of outcomes.
A world, quote unquote.
Because it's a whole new world in there.
Oh, yes, we do that here. Now, like we said at the beginning of this review, this is a mood piece. It is a cerebral account. It is very atmospheric. So much so that one of the producers, David Ellison, actually left financing the film because it got poor test screenings. He felt that the movie was too complex, too intellectual for the broader audiences. Just goes to show you how much producers know a lot of the times. But it is, on some accounts, it is one movie that is gonna make you think. It is a movie that, yes, you can just sit back and enjoy and take it for what it is, or you can dig a little deeper, ask yourself some questions about the nature of the film, about the nature of these characters, about the nature of the Shimmer. And ultimately, that's exactly what you're supposed to get out of a movie. A movie is art. This is an art piece. And it is great to see something like this released right after Black Panther. People are still fired up about going to the movies, and they're actually seeing this movie.
All right, well, we love this movie. 8.5.
8.5 out of 10.
Go out and see it. I think you'll like it too.
It's great.
If you've seen this movie, please comment below. Talk about, the deaths. What do you think about the Shimmer? We have a lot of spoiler type talk that we want to talk about. So get in discussion with us, because we have a lot of questions that we've been asking each other, and we're not really even sure either of us knows.
This whole review could have been totally off the mark. We don't care.
But it's fine. It's fine. So this is Black and Yellow Movies. We have an Instagram page.
Black and Yellow Movies, the same exact name, where you can find out all the latest things we've been doing, movie facts, movie reviews. The link is in our bio. Please click to subscribe. And we have a plethora of posts just about independent and foreign movies that we've loved over the years.
And also like us on Facebook. We have a lot of stuff on there too. So we'll see you guys next time.